but first, the two choices here. So you can choose to either hear from Dr. Robin Kenter, who is a postdoctoral research fellow at the Department of Clinical Psychology at University of Bergen in Norway. She will present and then answer questions from the Norwegian perspective and the planned use of the It Fits toolkit by the Center for Mobile Mental Health in seeking to increase the use and impact of digital psychological interventions in Norway. So that's one project aiming to use the It Fits toolkit after this project ends. And another project also aiming to use the It Fits toolkit. For that, we're pleased to welcome Jinane Abi Ramia from the National Mental Health Program in Lebanon and Ken Carswell from the World Health Organization to offer the Lebanese perspective and the planned use of the toolkit in rolling out Step by Step, which is an electronic mental health intervention.
Okay, well, I think we've only got 30 minutes, so I'd suggest we start. There'll possibly be some other people joining us still coming in, but let's make a start. So welcome everybody, and thanks for coming to this presentation. As the organisers said, we're here to present on Step by Step. My name's Ken Carswell. I'm a technical officer at the World Health Organization at the Department of Mental Health and Substance Use in Geneva. And we've been collaborating with our colleagues in Lebanon for many years now on this project. I'll just hand over to Jinane for a quick introduction, and then I'll do the first few slides, and then we'll be handing over to Jinane for the rest of the presentation. What we were thinking was doing the presentation and saving some questions to the end, but please feel free either to put your questions in the chat or to just raise your hand or something afterwards once we've done the presentation. So Jinane, would you like to give an introduction?
Sure, thank you, Ken. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining our session. We're excited to present about the project. I'm Jinane Abi Ramia. I'm the project coordinator locally in Lebanon. I work with the National Mental Health Program at the Ministry of Public Health in Lebanon. We have been collaborating with WHO for the past 5 years, I guess, so far, to develop, adapt, and test an e-mental health intervention called Step by Step. You will learn more about it in a bit. So okay. Thank you all.
Thank you, Jinane. Okay, so on with the presentation. So firstly, very briefly, I'm going to give you a quick introduction into some of our work at WHO. So
can I say one thing? Sorry to interrupt.
Sure, sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
I just got in here and I think there's still quite a lot of people waiting to get into a breakout room. So
is there? Okay. All right. So maybe we should pause then if there's still people coming in.
Yeah, I think you can see the count going up still also for you. So.
Yeah, I can't see where do I say? Oh, there we go. Participants. Okay, got them now. Okay, so it is going up. All right, we'll give it. Oh yes, here we go. I see now. Oh gosh, yes, it is going up lots still. Yeah, I thought maybe it was quite automatic in how quickly people came in, but it seems not.
Seems
so
like
we can start with the introductions
undecided.
Again.
Seems like people are undecided between the sessions.
Okay, we'll just give another minute then, and then we can start with the presentation. Okay, so we seem to have 19 people, 20 people. Okay, I'll just give another few seconds. Okay, so let's make a start there. The first couple of slides anyway are about our work in WHO more generally. So we will then be getting into the actual specifics of Lebanon. So if anybody joins after that, then they'll still be hearing hopefully the majority of the presentation. And okay, So to just start us off, very briefly, an introduction to give a context to this. So obviously at WHO, we do a lot of different types of work, but one area we've been working on for the last many years, I've been at WHO since about 2015, this was happening before then, is an area of work on scalable psychological interventions. And the aim here was really to develop and release a range of different interventions that are available globally for people to implement, because although there's lots of evidence for psychological interventions and for them being delivered by non-specialists, accessing the manuals can be quite difficult. So we've been working to develop a range of interventions, including self-help books, online interventions like Step by Step, which we'll discuss, and also briefer forms of treatment. So for example, like 5-session delivered CBT, such as Problem Management Plus. So just to say a little bit about e-mental health, I mean, obviously, I'm sure many people know this already. It's a very exciting area of work. At WHO, we have a recommendation, particularly for self-help, particularly for guided self-help for depression, and we see it really as an area where we can reach many people through both the digital means, but also through the forms of self-help. And I think that during COVID, during the last year, we've seen a huge rise in the number of countries, the number of organisations transitioning to delivering work over digital means, online self-help courses, and also sort of tele-counselling or teletherapy. So there's many exciting innovations and developments in this space. One of the issues being, and again, I'm sure many people know this, that although there's many apps out there and many interventions, the actual evidence base for them, for many of them, is either limited. So what we sort of tend to see is that many evidence-based interventions don't make it to scale, while many apps and things that might be very popular, maybe that some of them don't have so much evidence. This seems to be starting to change, but that's still a bit of an issue. So one of the things that we were trying to address here was that problem by developing an intervention that could be then scaled and that also has an evidence base. So here's just a selection of some of the interventions that we've released at WHO under this program of work, and Step by Step will be the one we're talking about here. So really just to mention, many organizations were involved in this, and a huge thanks to everybody who has been involved. I mean, it's been such a big project and so many different organizations involved that it's not really possible to name all the individual people, but this slide just gives a bit of a flavor of some of the main collaborators on this program. As well as our work in Lebanon, we've also been looking at Step by Step in other countries. For example, under the Strengths Project, who have supported the development of the app version that you're going to see. And Strengths is a project to deliver scalable interventions to Syrian refugees in Europe. And there's many more other projects related to Step by Step. Huge thank you to everybody who's been involved in this work so far. So now I'm going to hand over to Jinane for the main aspects of the presentation, which is really about Step by Step in Lebanon, because although we've got this bigger global context, the majority of the work we've been doing so far have been with our partners in Lebanon, and you'll hear a bit about what we've done, where we've come from, and where we're going next. So over to you now, Jinane.
Thank you, Ken. Can we move to the next slide? Yeah. So I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with Lebanon. This is just a small introduction. It's a middle-income country. It's a small country, actually, it's known to have a huge political turmoil after the civil war 40 years ago. And it has 6 million inhabitants. 1.5 million of these are Syrian displaced people. So it's one of the countries who has the most, the biggest number of Syrian displaced people after the Syrian crisis. Lebanon actually witnessed a lot of crises last year and the year before, from political instability, attempts for a revolution, so economic crisis that was deemed one of the most severe economic and financial crises worldwide. And that was stopped by, unfortunately, a huge explosion in Beirut, the capital of Lebanon, in a residential, basically, town. due to ammonium nitrates that were not stored properly in the port. So this resulted in over 200 deaths and thousands of injured, and so really it affected the country drastically. So all this actually increased the need for mental health treatment eventually. Lebanon is known to have a 90% gap in mental health treatment, and these figures are even before all these crises that I just mentioned. So you can expect really the need currently in the country. On a bright side, we do have a national mental health program that was launched by the Ministry of Public Health in 2014 with a clear strategy at the national level to reform the national mental health system and to decrease the gap in mental health treatment. So this program has been working for the past 6 years on different levels, from trainings to integration of mental health in primary healthcare services, and a lot of other layers. One of these is actually integrating the electronic mental health intervention step by step in the country, because it's part of the national mental health strategy. So this program partnered with WHO to develop, adapt, and test this intervention. Next, please, Ken. Okay, so what is step by step? This is a brief overview of it. Next. Okay, it's an electronic self-help intervention. It's story-based, so based on illustrated story for people with depression. This intervention is available through a website or an application in English and Arabic. It's evidence-based and uses behavioral activation methods, stress management methods, positive self-talk, social support gaining, and relapse prevention techniques as well. It's a short program. It's a 5 weeks program. Every week, one session opens where people can get to read the story and listen to it. It's also audio recorded, where they learn techniques and skills to cope with their symptoms and improve their well-being. There's also an interactive part where they can actually write in the boxes and schedule activities and apply all these exercises that they learned throughout the story. We do offer as well minimal guidance by trained non-specialists. So these are lay people with background in health, social sciences, psychology, who are trained by us on providing basic minimal support, motivation, and assessing any risk, any high-risk case, of course, and referring them to the proper services according to protocols and to support templates. The guidance is for 15 minutes a week, either by phone or by message support. The application is, of course, free of charge. It's confidential. People can use fake usernames. It's credible because it's managed by MOPH and designed by WHO. And participants get to answer online baseline questionnaires online. So there are pre and post assessments 2 months after the sign up. The inclusion criteria are the age above 18. People should be living in Lebanon to be able to be referred to services if needed. They should have a minimum literacy level in English or Arabic, and they should score above the cutoff criteria for depression and anxiety. Next, please. Okay, so here we also display the phases of the research, 5 years until now, in a quick overview. So in 2016-17, we developed a website first where we tested it, and we culturally adapted actually the intervention for the main groups in Lebanon, mainly Lebanese, Syrians, and Palestinians. And we conducted an uncontrolled feasibility study where we assessed for the feasibility, accessibility of the project, and evaluated it. Eventually, we moved to developing an application and a further enhanced website in 2018. And we conducted a feasibility randomized control trial that was also evaluated. And according to it, we further improved our delivery methods and the content and the features of the application until we reached 2019 and 20, where we conducted and we just completed a definitive RCT. That enabled us to see whether this is effective and cost effective in Lebanon. And following this, we are currently in the preparation phase of scaling up this project, this intervention, into a national public service that's available in the country for everyone who needs it. So this is where we are right now. Okay, next. So this is also an overview of the RCT. To our knowledge, this is one of the biggest trials in low and middle income countries in e-mental health interventions. So we were able to recruit 1,247 participants that were divided between Syrians and Lebanese and other people living in Lebanon. We had an intervention group and a group that received enhanced care as usual, which basically consisted of a page of psychoeducation and a list of services that they can refer to if they wish to receive face-to-face support. Both groups answered the pre and post questionnaires and also follow-up questionnaires 3 months after the post questionnaire. So the primary outcomes that we tested for were depression using the PHQ-9 questionnaire and the functioning level with WHODAS 2.0. We also had secondary outcomes also. So we tested for cost effectiveness too, through an analysis of the cost effectiveness of the intervention. Next. Okay, so just to say before we continue that the results are being analyzed now and they are positive and they are promising. So we're already in the preparation phase of the scale up. Also, aside the quantitative analysis, we also conducted a thorough qualitative analysis with 48 key informant interviews, 28 interviews with participants from the intervention and control, with those who completed and who dropped out from the intervention as well, with 7 research teams, so the e-helpers and the project coordinators, as well as 13 stakeholders from partners, partnering NGOs locally, internationally, UN agencies, and ministries as well. This is one quote that really stuck in my mind, and I think it's very powerful. So we put it here. It's from one Syrian female intervention user who completed the intervention. She said that during the Beirut explosion, when blood was running on my head, I started breathing slowly. I understand now the importance of these exercises. So she was referring to breathing exercises and other techniques as well that she learned throughout the step-by-step intervention. Okay, next. Thank you. Also, stakeholders reported positive feedback. They said that the app was very well received by beneficiaries. It's reachable, practical, provides solutions to stigma around mental health. And the e-helpers' presence, the minimal guidance, was key for people to continue and adhere until the end. It also taps onto the growing and important field of e-health, especially now during the COVID pandemic. And it's important also that it's in Arabic because there are no other evidence-based alternatives in Arabic that we know of in Lebanon, at least. And maybe in the region, I can't say about that. I don't know. So the phone interventions also are proving essential in the COVID pandemic and the electronic interventions overall. One of them also said, a friend told me that if she didn't have step-by-step, she would have definitely harmed herself by now or committed suicide. So for some, it was really life-changing. Next, please, Ken. Okay. So the full scale up into a public national service. So this is where we are now, and we'd like to briefly present the next steps that we're planning, and hopefully using the It Fits toolkit, we'll be able to further structure our thinking process and our planning procedure. So the scale up project objectives, we have overall long-term objectives to address the high burden of disease associated with depression symptoms through a potentially cost-effective and scalable evidence-based intervention in Lebanon. The general objectives are to improve the mental health of people living in Lebanon and to develop knowledge to replicate this step-by-step model in other settings, as also Ken mentioned previously. The specific objectives of the project, the end of project ones, are to devise an implementation model for Lebanon for after the project, so to be able to maintain it and sustain it on the financial level and the technical level, and identifying partners to support it. We also intend to scale up the services to reach at least 2,400 participants over a period of 18 months. So this is where it's like a test period of the implementation in the real world. So this is where we'll be able to test all the delivery models and the support and the recruitment dissemination model. We also intend to report and disseminate the results through academic papers and manuals and publications about scaling up step by step and other interventions that are relevant to this. Next, please, Ken. Okay, so the work plan is to devise a step-by-step implementation model to reach 2,400 participants in 18 months and to report and disseminate the results. So phase one, please, next, and also next. Okay, for the implementation model activities, they would actually be these are needed to integrate the project in the local context. So we would need to devise a service implementation model that we are already working on and to review it regularly, to identify communication and dissemination strategies for the recruitment, to conduct stakeholder consultation and to review this regularly as well. This already started too. And to implement the service, as I said already, to reach this amount of people in 1.5 years. Finally, to secure funding, support, and sustainability of the project. So the intervention will still be managed by the National Mental Health Program at MOPH. However, it will be hosted by a local partnering NGO called Embrace that operates the National Hotline for Emotional Support and Suicide Prevention in close coordination with the National Mental Health Program. We will be using implementation science approach that's supported by the VU University and other frameworks and toolkits, mainly using the online EdFits toolkit to integrate these tools and frameworks in it, hopefully. So this is what we intend to do. Please, next. Okay, so far, this is like the model, the service model. We will have a e-helper support model. We already recruited 10 volunteering e-helpers with different backgrounds in public health, psychology, and other social sciences background. These are non-specialists. They have been trained for 5 days on providing emotional, motivational support within the step-by-step project and to manage high-risk cases if needed. These e-helpers will come on a part-time shift, and they will commit to a certain number of months, so 6 months minimum, and then we can recruit others if they cannot commit more. They will be supported by a senior e-helper who is employed full-time to stay with them in the office, and by myself as a project coordinator. They will also be followed by a clinical supervisor, so who is a qualified psychologist who follows up with them on a weekly basis to ensure fidelity of the service and a good service quality. So each e-helper will actually have a fixed number of participants that I assign to them according to the preferred time and method of contact of the participants, and they will be supporting them on a weekly basis. The e-helpers will attend weekly meetings, supervision meetings with the clinical supervisor and ourselves, and they will share experiences and ask about any difficult problems they are encountering while providing support. We will also conduct fidelity checks regularly to maintain the quality of the service. Participants will be able to, they will be answering questionnaires, pre and post questionnaires, also weekly PHQ-4 questionnaires to assess any change in their well-being and their depression symptoms. Next, please, Ken. Another main activity would be to identify communication and dissemination strategies for recruitment. So we aim to have a social media strategy using, of course, a social media company that's boosting the posts and designing them. A mass media strategy going to TVs and radios to reach a bigger target number, and outreach methods also using our the help of our partners, the MHPSS task force, UN agencies, and local and international NGOs, as well as extending to the private sector, institutions, syndicates, and other means of reaching hard-to-reach individuals. We also we would like to identify a stakeholder to involve and engage stakeholders. So we already are conducting a stakeholders mapping exercise, and then we will be conducting meetings with our stakeholders and maybe develop general guidelines to support them in disseminating the project and to explore potential opportunities for integrating step by step into existing services as well. We will be following up and monitoring the integration process by these partners. Sorry, Ken, I forgot to say, yeah, so that was the slide. Okay, next. So the service will be provided to 2,400 participants over a year and a half. Next, during this phase, we will be learning how to provide support through volunteer e-helpers, and we will assess the turnover rate and all the challenges encountered to study how to disseminate and advertise the intervention to reach the biggest number of people intended, how to integrate step by step into other services, maybe the MHGAP trained health centers and other institutions, and to collect the implementation science indicators using scientific methods and frameworks. Finally, the reporting and results dissemination. So, okay, thank you. So to our knowledge, this will be the first e-mental health project to be delivered at scale in a low and middle income country. It will generate a lot of lessons for other countries. And during this phase, we will be analyzing the results and hopefully feeding into academic papers and guide manuals for integration of and scaling up of e-mental health interventions worldwide. Okay, next, please, Ken. So this is the project phases. I won't go into the details here for the lack of time. So in brief, we intend to prepare for the implementation. This is where we're recruiting and training e-helpers, updating the app, and developing strategies for communication. Next, we will be devising a revised step-by-step implementation model after consulting with stakeholders. And then we will deliver the service where we also do some lobbying with our partners and ensure sustainability plans. And then eventually we will evaluate the intervention quantitatively and qualitatively, of course, and disseminate the findings. So this is the plan. Next, the final two slides here. The first one is just to show how, like, our thinking process. We would like to base on evidence-based frameworks and tools to evaluate the service. So we use the RE-AIM evaluation framework, and we started identifying indicators and strategies and measurement methods to assess reach, the implementation, the maintenance, and the adoption of the intervention. So this is just one example of it. And next would be the CIFER. We also intend to use, we're exploring the use of the CIFER framework to identify barriers and strategies for the implementation. Of course, using the help of the It Fits toolkit, where we can structure all these steps forward. So sorry, I took too long. Thank you, everyone. And let's see if
Thank you, Jinane. Great presentation, and that was wonderful. We actually have another 15 minutes, so we have some great time for discussion now as well. So thank you for that presentation. Okay, I'm stopping sharing my screen, I think, just so I can see everybody. If we need to go back to the slides at all, then you can let me know, and we can always show them again. So yeah, thanks for that presentation, Jinane. Just to pick up on a few things. I mean, I think firstly, as was outlined there, certainly from WHO's perspective, my own perspective, what I find really exciting about this project is that we're going to be able to come up with a model, an example model. We're going to be able to learn through implementation, doing this in Lebanon, and then we can look at how that model can be adapted to other settings. And I think the use of a volunteer e-helper system is an excellent idea, and something that actually means that we could potentially then reach scale in a fairly cost-effective way. I suppose another great thing has been the ability to actually work on this project from the start, starting from, as you would have seen, starting from the pilot through the RCTs, really learning each and every time. And obviously we couldn't go through all the results there, but each and every time we've learned something, we've changed the app or changed the website, we've changed the stories, and we've learned again from the RCTs, and now we've adapted some things again. Now going into the implementation phase is a really great time to actually learn now what we do when we bring this to scale. And I suppose we're excited also about using the ITFITS toolkit and working on implementation science. And as you can see, there's already been quite a lot of work done on that. So we're now looking forward to seeing how we take that work and use the toolkit and then start using that to support us. Another couple of things just to quickly say. So as you would have seen, we were talking about reaching up to 2,400 people. That's I hope, and I think maybe a bit of an underestimate. We've actually got probably more capacity than that. But when we set up the project, we didn't want to overpromise because we have no idea really. We have an idea based on the RCTs, but it's obviously different when you go to scale. So we don't know. We'll learn. Maybe we'll reach 2,400. Maybe we'll reach 10,000. We have a model there that is scalable, and we could employ more volunteer e-helpers if we do get massive demand. So that was just a few little points I wanted to make on the back of the presentation. And so now the floor is open. There's a question in the chat that I'll go to first, and then maybe if people want to raise their hands and we can have a bit of a conversation about this. So there's a question in the chat from Do Young Kim. Thank you for the nice presentation. It's good to see the positive feedback. What were some of the negative feedback you received, if any, and how do you plan to incorporate them in the future work plan? I don't know, Jinane, if you would like to take that question.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for this question. It's very important to also highlight the negatives. Here, I'm happy to say that when we first started the project, the first pilot phases and the feasibility RCTs, we received more negative feedback than now, obviously, because we were able to address all these comments and to integrate them, the feedback. So that was a very good indicator as well that we are flexible and not a rigid intervention. So at first, people asked for more tailored stories. One example was that we had 2 stories in the app, one for females, one for males. Both were married with kids and they went through depression, etc. So we noticed that the majority of our participants were of a different age group. It was like a bit younger and a different profile. They were not married, they were university students or unemployed people who were looking for jobs. So they asked for more tailored stories. Eventually, we did add 2 other versions of the stories, males and females, with people who have that profile. So other things were people asked for to make the app more interactive. So we did add more notifications, push notifications, more encouraging messages, automated ones. And we recorded the app, all of it actually, audio. It was audio recorded. So to make the experience more enjoyable and to account for people also with different needs or to make it more engaging. So finally, when we reached the final evaluation of the RCT, mainly the negative comments were from people from the control group because they were expecting more and they didn't grasp the idea of being part of a research study. So they were looking actually for the service itself. From the intervention group, who were able to see the intervention, the most common negative feedback was about the slow or lack of internet or electricity in Lebanon. So this is something out of our control. The download of the app or using the app was slow, so that was a main barrier to using the app. People got impatient while waiting because of that problem. So we also adjusted that in a way that people had the choice to download the app without the audios. So that would make it less smaller in size and less heavy for the data consumption, etc. But still, I think this is a problem that we still need to think about. And hopefully with the ITFITS toolkit, we come up with more creative ideas. Other things people asked for example, after the Beirut explosion specifically, and the COVID pandemic, they asked for more adaptation and tailoring. So we also integrated more messages, for example, through the eHelper support, to account for activities that can be done at home instead of outdoor because of the regulations and the lockdown. As for the Beirut explosion, we started assessing whether people were directly physically injured or not, because they voiced other factors. So there was a lot of PTSD problems and panic attacks and things that inquired more specific and specialized care. So we also were very aware of that and referred people to the available services needed. So this is mainly the most common thing.
Yeah, thanks, Jinane. I'll just quickly add to that. I suppose, as you might be getting to hear now, cultural adaptation, consideration of user perspectives, and listening to that and changing that as we go has been quite central to this project. And it's something that we've learned in the department at WHO about human-centered design. And I think over the last few years, we've moved more and more to this sort of iterative approach. So, you know, we've got to balance. I would imagine over this part of the project, we'll see other ways that we want to improve the user experience of step by step, and also other things like, for example, can we link it into a mobile provider so that mobile providers give free access if the IP address is here or there, you know, so people can download it for free. So lots of things still to learn, for sure. Tim, I see you've got your hand up. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I think what's really interesting is who's going to be the core team, who's doing this work, who have you got in mind? My concern is this is a very research heavy version of the world you've set up here. And what I think is really key is that as part of the kind of the core team, giving you where you want to go, some decision making about who those people are going to be round the table doing the week by week work. I mean, the stakeholders you can work with over time, but I think I'm really interested in who you're thinking about to have round the table as the core team.
Okay, Jinane, would you like to answer that first, and then I can add something also on top, if you like.
Sure. So the structure of the team is basically we have the core team, the step-by-step team, which is made of the e-helpers, the volunteering e-helpers, the senior e-helper who oversees the day-to-day work, myself as a project coordinator. So all of us are already very familiar with the implementation part and not the research part alone. So we've been in the field for 5 years already. And the clinical supervisor, who is a clinical psychologist and who already was with us on board over the past 3 years, supervising and managing the clinical work of the e-helpers. So this is like the core team. We also have people from the National Mental Health Program, the head of the program, the operational manager, the service development coordinator, who is also overseeing other projects in Lebanon in the mental health area, and the focal persons from WHO who have been extensively overseeing this project over the past years. So this is like the executive board of the project. We also have a bigger committee, that's the steering committee, where we invite other people and stakeholders, partners on board, and representatives of people with lived experience too.
Yeah.
What's interesting there is it's going in the other direction. There's too many people around the table. So there's a kind of level of, to make the toolkit workable, you actually need a defined core set. And then you can work with some of these other people as stakeholders, as well as a broader kind of set of things. So it's thinking about who's around the table specifically on that kind of week by week basis. When you're making some of these decisions, it's going to become really key about enabling some of this work, because what's interesting and what we've hinted at a lot of the times is some people around the table or people you engage with as stakeholders as part of the process need to have the ear of the court, need to be able to create change at a kind of much bigger level than you can, or get you access to specific resources, or get you access to specific people or things. So there's a kind of level of, I think part of a really good implementation strategy is to work with ITFITs, is thinking about who is around that table doing that weekly work, and what links do you have above and beyond that? I will shut up. I could talk about this.
No, thanks, Tim. It's super helpful feedback and very helpful questions, and certainly things for us to consider. I mean, I'll just add to what Jinane was saying. I think the main person around the table is Jinane. She's very much the linchpin to it all. And we've worked in a very collaborative way throughout these last few years. And I think this is not just important for Lebanon, it's important, I think, for all countries when you're working with the Ministry of Health there and you're trying to set something up here. I think this has been one of the strengths, has been the collaborative approach that we've taken with the National Mental Health Programme there, and that we do have the access to all some of the main key stakeholders and players. And that's been one of the great things about this project. Also, like, for example, with UNHCR, with other colleagues who are working on with other groups. But I think I can see your point that we've got to be careful in how we manage this and how we take the decision centrally, and then maybe how we involve that wider group. I mean, one thing I'll say, we haven't had much access to the toolkit yet, so we're very excited about that. And I suppose this will be one of our learnings as we go ahead. And one of the nice things about this project and having the next 18 months is my impression is we'll be able to get to learn. So that hopefully at the end of the 18 months, we maybe have a slightly different configuration or a very different configuration from what we had before. So thank you. I don't know if there's any other comments or questions from anybody. We have about 3 minutes left before we all get called back, I think. If not, we can always keep following up with that point, Tim. Yeah.
Well, no, yeah, I was going to say, I think what I would say is I would actually change the composition depending on what you're focusing on. That actually you see the core team as a very iterative thing, yeah, and actually you draw in different stakeholders at different times to be part of that kind of core weekly meeting space. And I would think pragmatically about that kind of level of meeting to enable some traction. One of the reasons, the other thing is not to rely on one person, because people disappear, and that's no disrespect to you, but we saw it again and again and again about how that knowledge needs to be distributed over people, and that engagement needs to be distributed over people, because and that enthusiasm. And so there's something about how this thing becomes because all the toolkit is a project management device. All it is, it enables new conversations, or reframes slightly existing conversations, or reframes slightly existing habits and routines. And we see that in kind of quite interesting ways. Now, one of the problems is about how radical you want to be around that kind of stuff. But part of it is you don't always want the same usual suspects around the table that would be around the table in those core team meetings, because certain groups did really well by not engaging certain people around the table, as well as inviting others to be part of that. Because so I think there's a level of see it how it flows and gains and flows.
Right. If I may add something, actually, I may have forgotten that while presenting that part of the executive board is our local partner NGO who will be hosting the intervention. So they play a key role. So they are part of the executive board. And I believe that if we think about the It Fits Toolkit, so I will be managing that, as well as a focal person from that NGO, because we eventually intend to transfer knowledge to the whole NGO to be able to sustain it. So while we devise the whole model. So this is, of course, I totally support what you said, that it shouldn't be person focused. That's why we're trying our best to figure out the work model with them to transfer this knowledge to the organization itself, and not just one person from their side. So we're trying to involve many persons around, while having one focal person who's responsible for the coordination from their part as well. So maybe, I don't know if that answers part of.
No, it does, and I think that's the kind of key here. It's about distributing it over time. It's about, any other thing I'd think about is you need to be kind of quite flexible, which clearly you are to a certain extent, about how you're going to go forward with this, because it feels a bit, this is kind of where we're at, and it's about how willing you are to breach some of the kind of expectations. Actually, a social media campaign, you may go, bin that. Actually, given what we've just learned, we need to do this kind of stuff. So there's a level of your ability to kind of respond to oh, shut up. Sorry.
Tim,
Yeah.
no. Listen, thank you. I mean, and I think you're right. You're picking up on, well, you're confirming some of the things that we are thinking and we were hoping that we can be this flexible. We've been working with Christian and colleagues at the VU on this. So we're learning about implementation science. And I think one thing we're excited about is that we can be flexible. So it's actually quite good to hear that we might find social media campaign. We go, no, that it works for the research. It didn't work for this. Now we go and do whatever else. So it's actually validation and nice to hear that we're thinking in the right direction about this. So thank you. I see we're about to finish in the breakout room and we've only got 6 seconds left. So
Thanks
thank you all for your time.